Hello, and welcome to the latest installment in our UXDX online series. I hope you're excited as I am for the talks that we have today. But before we jump into those, I'd like to give a very quick introduction to UXDX and why we host these sessions. So at UXDX, we have a little bit of a motto saying the world is full of bad software. And I know that can sound a bit harsh, but where I think of this, and I always use the banking analogy, is I have one of the new digital first banks and I have a very traditional old bank. And I have apps for both of them that technically do the same thing, but they're worlds apart in terms of usability, in terms of like which one I'll reach for, and therefore which one I'll do more business with. And that's what we mean by bad software. It's not that it necessarily doesn't do what it says it does, but it's just not a great experience for people. So our mission is to help companies build an environment that can't build bad software, because we don't believe it's down to the people or the skills. We believe it's down to the processes that people follow, particularly that kind of water scrum fall where you lock in ideas well before you've had a chance to validate whether that's what customers really want or the experience they'll receive. And how we kind of advocate for that is shifting away from that waterfall or water scrum fall, as most people follow, to really truly empowered autonomous teams. And that's really easy to say and really hard to do in practice. And that's where these talks come in. So nobody's going to cover the entire end-to-end, but what we ask is people to share what they're doing in their space, how they're improving their part of the puzzle, so that you can kind of listen to that and hopefully learn and take away some valuable insights. And on that, as you're listening, please think of any questions that you might have or anything you want clarification on, because the speakers are happy to share their knowledge. So there'll be a gap at the end where you can ask any questions that you would have. But that's enough about me. You're not here to listen to me talk. So I'd like to introduce our first speaker this evening, who is Lughni, the Design Technology Manager at Puma. And Lughni will be talking about design system and code prototyping, bridging UX research and engineering. So welcome, Lughni, to the stage. Over to you.
Hello. Thank you for the introductions. My name is Lughni. At this moment, I'm working as a design technology manager at Puma. I'm managing Puma design system technical part and also leading the UX engineering. Nice to meet you. So in this agenda, there are four main parts that I would like to give an overview. First is design system relationship with code prototyping. And the second one is the tech stack for code prototyping. The third one is the engineering connections to UX research. And the fourth one is the takeaways of this overview. So we have been aware about the benefits of design system for production, which is to create consistent user experience, to be a source of truth for building digital products, and the reuse part will speed up the developments. And then pre-tested components works better, and so on. But actually, design system is really more than just for production. The nature of reusable UI in design system is a very powerful infrastructures to build prototype, either to design or code to support UX research team. So if we see this flow or scope, I said scope, there are three kind of a generic prototype. First, we have low-fi prototype, and second one, we have mid-fi prototype, and the higher interactivity, we have high-fi prototype. And we also have full-stack prototype, which is also including the API as well. However, if we see and if we think in a structural way, we see that actually we can use UI from design system to create mid-fi and high-fi prototype. So, for example, we can have a very static prototype with design system. There is no interactivity at all there. Or we can also build very interactive prototype using design system, and it goes both design and code. However, in this session, we will focusing on how a code prototyping with design systems actually can build a very powerful prototype. And I will give you a very comprehensive technical part of why it is powerful. So to build hi-fi prototype, it is important to treat design system code component as a part of equations instead of relying on it. But first, I would like to give you an overview of software architecture in general. And of course, this is like in a general diagrams. There are more complex, there are more simple architectures. But in the first one, we have front end layers. This is like the front end of the website. And then we have API layers. And then the third one, we have backend layers. And then we have database layers. And this is like the example of full working website or platforms that we see every day. However, actually, to build a very interactive and realistic prototype, we only need front-end layers, because the goal of prototype is literally not to deploy to productions, but the goal is to learn from the users. And if we go a little bit deeper, we will see that in front-end layers, we have frameworks, and then we have UI components, we have state managements, and we have data storage. And right now, framework, I think React has been very popular, Vue, Angulars, state managements from React, Redux, from Vue, Vuex, and from Angular, NGRX. And also we can use local JSONs for data storage. And for UI components, well, back then we can use bootstraps. Right now, well, design system become more popular and also become one of the most effective tools to build the products. Design system is becoming an equation to build code prototype. And if we see here, design system alone is not enough. We need to also think about the other stack, which is the frameworks, the state managements, and the data storage. And I will give you a little bit demo for that and how it makes difference. So the difference between production and code prototype is that code prototypes has no backend manipulation. We don't need to build integrations with backends. Of course, we can do it if we want to build a prototype using API to test some external data. But in overall, in a generic purpose, we don't need to use backend data or backend logic. And the second one, the code in a code prototype is not for productions, because the goal here is really to learn from the users. And as we build this prototype to learn from the users, we can build it as fast as possible. We don't need to worry about API. We don't need to worry about how is the logic with the GraphQLs, because everything is handled in the front end. Now I will give you the example of how we build prototype in our teams, collaborating with our UX researchers. As you can see here, with the code prototype, when we want to test some features, we can literally put an input there, and dynamically it will also show the result, because it sends the data from the input to the other elements. And can be done either using data managements that I mentioned it before. And this looks like we are building already full production, but it's actually not. This is literally front-end technology that create this prototype. And this interactivity, which give an ability to send the data, is the thing that makes code prototype very dynamic. And also we can create a very complex prototype, which if we deploy it in a production, if we implement this feature, it might cost a lot of time and cost. And this, for example, prototype is only using front-end logics, is composed with our Puma design systems, and I'm using JSON as a local storage. So if you see the text, if you see all of this information there is no backends. Everything is data from JSONs that I already write. So it's literally everything is in front end. So come back to this code prototype tech stack. We have these frameworks, we have this UI component, state management, and data storage. That is actually equations, a formula to build a code prototype in a very realistic and real-world context. So what I want to emphasize is that combining the tech stack with design systems, we will have an ability to not only speed up the code prototype, but also create a real-world context prototype, especially when we want to build something complex and we don't have the logic on it. And we can build a very dynamic journey on it based on different requirements, based on different logic. And everything is literally in front end. Again, no backend manipulations. That's why it can be built fast. Now, I would like to give you an overview on how could prototype work together with UX research. From my experience here, between UX engineer and UX research, they have the same goal. Their goal is to create better consumer experience. They have two different skill sets, but they have the same goal. The goal of user research is that I need to do user testing with the prototype as realistic as possible, because then they can get the result, which is also like very close to what they want to do. And then the UX engineers also have a goal, which is I want to build prototype as realistic as possible to support UX research. And of course, they are coming from different worlds. Like UX researcher, they have a different skill set. UX engineer, they have different skill set. But they, even though coming from two distant fields, they need to really work together. They need to have very strong collaborations, because that's the only way to build a very realistic code prototype that can answer UX researcher questions. So the collaboration is really important part. It's not enough just by having a very skillful UX engineers or very skillful UX researchers to build this realistic, helpful code prototype. Collaboration is just very, very fundamental. And in this product building process, in a learning phase, so UX designers, UX engineers, UX researchers, they iterate together. So when they have an idea, when product manager have an idea, they collaborate together and they iterate to find what's the best prototype to answer the questions. And everyone here has its own power, and they can contribute to the success of the prototype. It's important that UX designer also has very important role here, because UX engineers will also use the UX designers good design prototype to build code prototype. So again, it's really about collaborations here. Okay, so through strong collaborations, a refined code prototype can be an effective medium to bridge between engineering and UX research. The code prototype is really engineered to help user researchers. The code prototype is not engineered to deploy for production. It's really engineered to validate the research questions. So it's very important here. When is the best time to use code prototype? I think there is no one for all answer, because I think sometimes it's better to use Figma prototype. Sometimes it's better to use code prototype. Sometimes it's better to use also A/B testing. This depends on the case of situation that we have. But in my experience, we literally, when we have one of these three situations, we will start to use code prototype. First, when we don't have the existing logic. So for example, we want to implement features called chat. And in chat, we want to have an ability where the user can input the text and can put the message there, and then they get automatic reply, for example. Before we deploy to the productions and spend so much money for this feature, we can actually literally just build prototype of it, mock the API, and make it a very realistic, and the user still really can chat with the chatbot or with the users to just have an ability to interact in the chatbot. And sometimes, when we want to put it in our platform directly, it will just cost money in terms of time. It will just cost so much money to build it. So when we don't have the logic and it takes like a lot of time to build it, I think before we invest that idea, it's better to test it with a code prototype. The next one is when we need to have a very dynamic journey. So for example, we want to have features where it is very complex, and it's like we have to send the data back and forth. For example, the one that I showed to you just now, where the users need to input some name and numbers. And we need to test with the users that how they put their own name, not the name that we already predefined, but their own name. They can just type their name and their number there. And means that it's very dynamic. So if we want to implement these very complex features, then we need to have a code prototype, because the programmatically approach that front end has, it'll be super helpful to mediate between the user researcher and the user tester on this prototype. The last one will be realistic context. Sometime dynamic journey. In a dynamic journey part, we need to be very realistic that this prototype cannot be static. So, for example, in Jersey, we want that the user literally can just put their name and number there, and this is not possible with the static file, because they cannot put their information there. And if we, for example, if we go a little bit deeper, we will also probably will go deeper into how the user interact with the input text, how the input text is perceived by the users. And all of this will matters and can be answers by using code prototype. So in conclusions, there are four important takeaways that I would like to share it to you all, which is, it is really possible to build a real world context prototype in very, very quick time. It's very possible. because we don't need to touch any backend. All we need to have a front-end skill, and then we can manipulate all of this backend using our local storage data. We can use state managements, and this will be already the formula to build realistic real-world context prototype. And then it's important that the tech stack for code prototype and production is not the same. For production, as I shared it to you, it's just really big architectures from front end to back ends and to database. It's just in a different level of complexity. With code prototype, we only need front end layers. So basically the frameworks, we right now it's very popular to use React, for example. The UI components, we just need to use our design systems, and we already built prototype which is very similar with our production platform or app. And then state management, this is to manage the data interactions, and then the local storage like JSON, which is we can use it to mimic the database, so that rather than we connect to database, we can just connect it to our front end layers. The third one's, this is also from our experience. We need to, in terms of code prototype, we need to start from zero, and we need to treat it as a product, not a project. Because sometimes, like we use it as a project and we will not evolve. Because code prototype, if we treat it as a product, we will know what we need to improve. So in our team, we have our own internal code prototype, and we treat it as a product. It evolves over the times, it grows, and we give some features in a prototype in terms of search, in terms of finding the prototype. We are not just, we do not treat it as a project, but we treat it as a product that evolves. The last one, which is very, very important, and this is really about human relationship. It's not only about the ability to code, it's not about the ability to test, but literally two powers are combined to build powerful prototype and also to be able to find the user's need effectively. So close collaborations is so fundamental. I think that's all. From my overview, feel free to have question if you are not clear or you need more information. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Lughni. There was a really nice view of it from an engineer's perspective that often a lot of people kind of maybe listening out there, they might be more used to it from the UX research or design perspective. So thank you for sharing that.
Thank you.
I'll jump in with the first question because I'm kind of just intrigued. How long would you typically spend creating one of these? Like, so, and has that improved over time? One of these kind of quick early prototypes.
Yes. So basically, for example, when we build product, we normally literally build the MVP of the platform, and then over the time we will grow it because of the US. The user researcher will request some features that we need to be tested. So over the time, it grows to be like a product as well. Like when we want to build another prototype, it will become very fast to build that. And the first one is a little bit slow, but not so slow because everything is available there, and the UI is already available, the logic is already available in front ends, the data is available. Literally, we don't need to worry about anything. We just need to worry about what we need to test, how we can build a prototype that really help the user researchers to find the answer that they want to have. So yeah, it's not so slow. It's actually very quick. For me, for example, one whole day is enough to build prototype, like because we already have MVP on it. We just need to add the logic on it as well. So yeah.
Awesome. That's kind of a nice quick kind of come up with an idea, prototype it, test it, prototype it, test it. Yeah, that's great. And what kind of collaboration is there? Can you kind of describe? I'm always intrigued. Like, do you sit together? Do engineers attend interviews with customers? Like, what is the? You mentioned close collaboration, but how does that actually work in practice?
Yeah, I want to shout out to my colleagues, Catherine's, as a US user researchers. The close collaborations is literally happen in very early phase. So when we have an idea, so for example, product managers have an idea, and then UX designers will start to scratch the designs based on the product manager's idea, and then my colleagues, user researchers, will start to iterate and have an overview what they want to do, what they want to find the answer, what they want to test. And then in that time as well, I will be invited, because I will then give an overview of what kind of prototype, in terms of code prototype, that can be helpful. Because sometimes I can give the overview in a code perspective, in a very interactive, realistic perspective, and UX designer can give a very nice and conceptual design of it, and user researchers can also then can iterate together. So the collaboration is really started in very early phase, in iterate phase. It's not started in just like, hey, we have design, you need to code. It's not like that. It's literally in very early phase. Yeah.
Excellent. And do you have any? I know in some companies, budget is always the thing that comes up, and it's kind of like we're very early days. We haven't secured budget because we don't have enough of a business case put together. So, is there any challenges with that in your company of kind of dedicating people to work on these very early stage ideas?
I think the best way is to combine design system and UX engineering's role, in my opinion, because they are very close. They are very interconnected. Design system and UX engineering, they are, in my opinion, are like a siblings. Person who work in UX engineering, they normally are familiar with design system. People who is in design system engineering, they are very aware about UX engineering, because they are also aware about the design of the design and implement it in a code. So they are very typically siblings, in my opinion. So someone can have a can share the same role if they don't have the budget, for example, or if they want to increase the team, but they want to be more connected. Because sometimes, in my opinion, it's better to just have the design system and UX engineering in the same space. They are very, very close. Yeah.
Yeah. And I'm going to ask maybe a tricky one. Well, maybe not tricky, but
Yeah.
sometimes if you're going with that, I guess, front end first approach. So you're mocking up the front end. Is there a risk that when you get to development and the back end and the other parts of the stack, that you've designed something that's incredibly expensive from a query perspective, or things that maybe the data isn't available, challenges that you might encounter on the back end?
Yes, actually, that's the role of UX engineer here, is that he already kind of aware the possible technical challenge that the team can have if they want to build this, because the technical people can give an overview in technical view, and I think by having that person's bridging the engineering and UX research and giving the overview what's possible and what's not possible, I think that's super powerful, because it will minimize the risk of failing projects. This engineering skill is super useful, not only for production, but also to analyze whether the features is possible or not using their engineering skill. Yeah.
Excellent. Yeah, no, it is great to get that kind of insight before you go down a dead end by accident.
Yeah, that's true.
And you mentioned that this works best for greenfield sites, kind of where you're starting from scratch. What about those big, nasty existing systems that we're always continuously updating. As you said, it's a product. It never kind of finishes. So can you do the same thing with your existing, or is it not really as effective?
I think that's possible because basically the key here is to build the MVP part of it because the MVP will grow, and I think if we have the MVP, we can structure it and manage it into micro parts so that we become manageable. But if we are not like again, it's like if we don't treat it as a product, we will just treat it like, okay, we will do it now. We will think about the next step later. But when we treat it as a product, then we will have a kind of plan. Was the approach that we need to take for the successful in a long term for the infrastructure as a prototype. So yeah, I think that's still possible, either complex or very green base.
Brilliant. And I'll leave with the question that everybody always asks now these days.
Okay.
How are you using kind of AI to even get faster still?
Yeah, that's also very good questions. I think the weakness, the power of AI is that it can create prototype really quick, right? But AI right now is still not connected to design system. I assume like Cursor AI or another coding AI, they have not been connected to the design system. So when we build prototype, it's possible, but it's likely that it will be very similar with our platforms. And if it's not similar, then it will be like also a little bit tricky for the users research goal, because then what they want to find and what they will have in a real platform, it will be not the same. But I think in the future it will be easier. My predictions that AI will be more integrated to design system, and then building code prototype will be faster with the help of AI. So I'm very optimistic for that. Yeah.
Excellent. Yeah, like I'm blown away by the recent Claude Code release and how accurately it can review a code base and create stuff. So we'll see in a few more months they'll release an upgrade and everything. We'll see where it goes.
Yeah.
Excellent. Well, that brings us to time. So thank you very much, Lughni, for sharing your insights about how you're prototyping with UX at Puma.
Thank you so much, Rory. Appreciate it.
We did have a second talk scheduled for this evening, but unfortunately, Anusha hasn't been able to join us. So apologies for that if you've been waiting for that. But if you are interested in just the concepts of breaking down the barriers between product, UX, design, and dev, that's what UXDX is all about. And we have a conference coming up in Berlin from the 19th to the 21st of May, 40 speakers, 8 workshops, 1,000 attendees across kind of in-person and online. So if you are interested, please do consider joining us there. But if not, I look forward to seeing you at the next UXDX Online. I just want to thank Lughni for sharing a great case study today, and thank you all for attending. See you next time.